everyone. I'm Maureen McGuigan, Deputy Director of Arts and Culture for Lackawanna County. Welcome to the fourth edition of Lackawanna County Arts and Culture Live, bringing you arts, culture, and history to your homes during this time of quarantine. We have a great show for you tonight. We have Stephanie Longo, author and historian, talking about the history of Italian festivals in Lackawanna County, followed by Bryan Wylder, who will be playing some folk and country music, and ending with classical musician Anthony Fortuna, who will be showcasing various woodwind instruments. So thank you for joining us. We're here every Wednesday, 7 to 9. We hope you enjoy the show, and we hope to see you again. We have Stephanie Longo, author, historian, lover of all things Italian American, talking about Italian festivals of Northeastern PA, because sadly, we can't have St. Ubaldo right now, but it's great to have her here to talk about it. So you had a wonderful story that we start out with about how you became so passionate about your heritage and the mission to kind of tell the story.
Yeah, I mean, this has been something that has been a major part of my life since I was a child. My mother, Annie, she's watching, so hi, Mom. She is the one who actually taught me my heritage. My earliest childhood memory is of the two of us at Dino and Francesco's restaurant in Clark Summit. And, I was 5. She was just trying to keep me behaved. And they had the placemats with the Italian map. So she took my hand and she was tracing the boot of Italy. And she told me that her daddy was from there. And my grandfather died 8 years before I was born, so I never got to know him. But it just always stayed with me. So it was something I just wanted to explore my entire life. And when I had the chance to learn Italian when I went to the University of Scranton, I jumped on it. And it's really become this cornerstone of my life in so many ways.
Yes, I know. Let's see, we were talking about kind of, you had some really wonderful serendipitous things happen to you, that maybe something that seemed not so great had turned into a great new path, because you said you were a Italian and French major at the University of Scranton, and you had planned to go on that path, the path
Yes.
that, it kind of switched for you.
Yeah. So what happened was I was working on my PhD in Italian literature. And unfortunately, the university that I was at decided to cancel the program about a semester in. And I was clearly devastated, but you realize that it's not something that's meant for you when the door slams the way that it does. And at the time, I was in my early 20s. So of course, to me, it was the end of the world. And I had just happened to be in touch with the Cocha Institute. It's an Italian American institute out of Montclair State University in New Jersey. And their director happened to be in DC at the time. And there was the American Italian Historical Association's conference going on. And she was chairing a panel. So she said, why don't we go to this panel, sit there, network a little bit, and just see what's going on in the world. And, maybe you might get an idea. So I'm the type of person I'll talk to just about anybody. So my friend went and did whatever she had to do to get ready for this panel. And this gentleman came in and sat next to me. I was the only one there. So he sat right next to me and just struck up a conversation with me. And he was saying to me, he's like, so where are you from? And I kind of told him my sob story there. And at the end of this conversation, he said, so you're from Scranton. There's a lot of Italians there. Have you ever thought about writing a book? And I said to him, well, yes, I always wanted to write, but it's so hard to get published. He's like, no, I'll make it happen. And I thought, yeah, okay, you're nuts. This is not going to happen. Who is this guy? And sure enough, my friend started off this panel, and come to find out he was the president at the time of the American Italian Historical Association. He took my name, he took my contact information, and he gave it to my publisher. And the rest is literally history.
Yes, it is. You have a wonderful book, and now you have a super cool job, which I just love. Would you want to tell us a little bit about what you're doing? Because it is, something you're very passionate about and ties into everything.
Oh my gosh, it is my absolute dream job come true. I am the associate producer and chief administrative officer of the Italian American podcast. The podcast itself is based in New York, and they're wonderful because they let me remote in from home, so I get the best of all worlds. And I get to help produce the show, find guests, research topics, and do a lot of the interesting things that we do in the background. Our chief dedication is to preserving, promoting, and protecting Italian American history. And that's been my mission in life since I was 5, really. And being able to do this on a daily basis is just thrilling. We have a stellar team. We all really have a strong desire to see the Italian American heritage preserved for future generations, and we all work toward that in different ways. I can't say enough of great things about it, and I hope that if anybody's watching, they check out ItalianAmericanPodcast.com so they could definitely listen to
Yeah,
the
you
show.
do a lot of great things, and I don't want to take too much time.
Sure.
It started a little late, but I hope people do read. But I loved kind of what we talked about too. I'm going to kind of combine a couple questions because we talked about how there's unfortunately bad stereotypes of Italians that are done through the media and movies and TV, but then there's the good stereotype, or not even stereotype. There's the good elements about Italian Americans, and you had mentioned Moonstruck, and I like some of what you said about the culture of why people are drawn to it and the good things that we can celebrate about being Italian American.
Well, Moonstruck is a great example because it's just a movie that celebrates our heritage. The Italians in there are not stereotypical Italians, even though you can say that they are in some ways, but they're the good stereotype. You're sitting through this movie and you're not seeing the mafia stereotype, which is the number one stereotype that we're always fighting against. I mean, I've been places where people have said to me, okay, which one of your relatives is in the mafia? And it's like, really? It's 2020 and you're asking me this? Like, come on. It's upsetting. It's upsetting to see these negative stereotypes. And I think that the more that we promote positive stereotypes, and that's one thing that I try to do in my books. If you read one of my books, you will see there's nothing in there negative. I don't go into crime. I don't go into these things that could be perceived negative because I don't think that there's a place for it in my work. Let the true crime authors deal with that stuff. Let the people who are fascinated by the mafia deal with that stuff. I want to focus on the positive contributions of Italian Americans. And sometimes you have to tell a mafia story. Sometimes it's something that is there, it's staring you right in the face, but you can choose to tell that in a positive way.
Yeah.
You can choose to say, this is not representative of the entire ethnicity. I think that the issue is that people believe that it's representative of the entire ethnicity, and that's why it's a stereotype, but it's not. As far as I know, I don't have any relatives that are in the mafia.
And that's why the work you do is so important. And, we were kind of talking about, Italian Americans today and how you capture that. But one nice thing you said too, because it is the pandemic time and we're sort of isolated, but I liked how you were talking about the resiliency of the Italians and the Italian American culture, and that, we've been through bad times before. You were talking about a plague that happened in Italy that people did come over.
Yeah. And it's one of the things that I will talk about in this presentation. We're a people who has been plagued by plague, so to speak. There's been a lot of plagues and a lot of disasters that have happened in Italy. And every time that something like that has happened, the people have come back stronger than ever. And I think that's one of the basic cornerstones of the Italian American ethnicity. We have this resiliency that goes even beyond just ourselves. It translates back into generations, and generations have passed down this resiliency to us. If we get hit by something, we're going to survive. And I think that's one of the main things that we believe, not just as an ethnic group, but I think as a society. I think every ethnicity out there has some sort of a resiliency story.
Yeah.
For Italians, it's we've survived plagues, we've survived earthquakes, we can survive this too.
Well, that's a great way to end because I want to get to it. Take your time. Again, I apologize for the delay, but you're so poised. You didn't even bat an eye. So I'm going to jump out and then I'll come back in to thank you before we next introduce our next guest. So
Okay.
I'm looking forward to this. I'm going to spotlight you and I'll see you soon.
All right. Well, again, I just want to thank Maureen and Lackawanna County Arts Department for having me present what is really my chief love here. I love presenting about the Italian American community of Northeastern Pennsylvania because it is so important for people to understand exactly what our history is. If you don't know your history, it's a tragedy in many ways because you have nothing to build off of for your future. So tonight I thought a fun way to begin this presentation would just be to celebrate the Italian festivals in Lackawanna County, especially because a lot of these festivals aren't going to happen this year. The one that we know, of course, is St. Ubaldo, La Corsa dei Ceri in Jessup. And we want to celebrate that as well as other festivals that may or may not happen. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but we can, of course, celebrate whatever we have and just move forward with it. So tonight I'm going to be talking about several communities in Lackawanna County. And the first image I want to show you is just your basic map of Lackawanna County. And for those of you that are from the area watching, this is it. And you can spot your hometown. You can spot some other towns that you know and love. Lackawanna County is Pennsylvania's youngest county. It was formed in 1878 out of Luzerne County. And interestingly enough, in the top 20 most Italian towns in the United States, Lackawanna County actually has 2 out of the top 20. And then the really cool thing about northeastern Pennsylvania is that Luzerne County has 3 more out of that top 20. The 2 Lackawanna County locations are Dunmore, which is number 12 on the list, and Old Forge, which is number 17. So these are the part of the top 20 most Italian towns in the United States. The Luzerne County towns are Jenkins Township, West Pittston, and Hughstown. So very, very obvious where the Italian heritage is in this area. And when I present this topic to a lot of people, I try to explain that there's the map of Lackawanna County, but there's also the Italian map of Lackawanna County. So for tonight's purposes, we're going to start in the city of Scranton. We're going to head over to Jessup, up to Carbondale, into my hometown of Dunmore, and into Old Forge. And I want you to really take a look at those stars, because those stars correspond to something that we all know and are very familiar with in Lackawanna County, and that's the coal mines. So Italian immigrants actually came to our area to work in the coal mines. And the reasons why they settled so close to the mines is because they had to arrive on foot to get to work. They didn't have a car, obviously. They didn't have any other transportation. So they had to go into these ethnic enclaves. And as you just saw on that map, they are right along the coal veins of Lackawanna County. So we're going to start our little Italian tour, like I said, in the city of Scranton. And this part of it is probably one of my most favorite ones to talk about, because I will talk to you about the first Columbus Day in Scranton. And this is from 1892, October 21st. So we all know that Scranton has one of the nation's largest St. Patrick's Day parades. But actually, this Columbus Day celebration in Scranton was even bigger than the St. Patrick's Day parade. The day began at 4:30 in the morning with a cannon shot out of the Watrous Armory, and Bishop William O'Hara had a mass at the cathedral. The entire city of Scranton had to close down that day because the crowds were so large that it was standing room only. And the MC of the event was Frank Carlucci, and he actually sculpted the Columbus statue that we have on Scranton's Courthouse Square today. And the interesting thing is that Frank Carlucci himself is a very well-known name. We, of course, know of Senator Carlucci from the United States government, but there was also Frank Carlucci, his grandfather, that was a stone mason. And he actually sculpted the grand staircase at Ellis Island. And as I found out when I was doing my research from the Forest City Historical Society, the stones at Ellis Island staircase came from Frank Carlucci's quarry in near Forest City. So in Susquehanna County, these stones are. So the first steps that the immigrants had when they came to the United States was actually on northeastern Pennsylvanian rock, if you want to say that. So it's a very special thing. Frank Carlucci is also known locally for being the person who sculpted the Radisson Lackawanna Station Hotel. And you could actually see Mr. Carlucci. He is the shorter gentleman with the mustache in the top row in this photo. Frank Carlucci dedicated the Columbus statue at this event, and he had his studio on Madison Avenue in Scranton. And if you went by, he had the pieces of the statue being sculpted. So you might go by, you might see an arm, you might see the head, the torso, depending on what day it was. But this was considered a gift from the Italian-American citizens to the city of Scranton that day. And with this parade that you're seeing these photos of, and these are the only 2 photos that we know of that are in existence of this parade, these people that were at this parade, they were so unruly that the Scranton police considered opening fire hoses on the surging mass of people. And the police had to ride on horseback to try to at least cut a path through these people. Miraculously, nobody was injured that day. There's reports from the Scranton Times that people were actually surprised because there were that many people downtown. And it was a pure celebration of Italian heritage and history in downtown Scranton in 1892. Every business in the city at that point was decorated in some form for Columbus. It is claimed that the Samters building downtown actually had the most dramatic display, including an actual replica of the Columbus statue. And speaking of the statue, here it is. This is our Columbus statue on Courthouse Square in downtown Scranton, and it remains there today. And obviously, Columbus has been a very controversial figure lately, but from what I have been told, this statue will remain in the city of Scranton, thankfully, because it was given by the Italian American citizens. So it would actually be considered, as we say in Italian America, a brutta figura, so a bad thing to do to the Italian community if it was taken out. The Lackawanna County Commissioners are wonderful enough to actually celebrate Italian heritage every October with a flag raising of the Italian flag at Courthouse Square. October is considered National Italian American Heritage Month. So the Lackawanna County Commissioners and the entire county government is gracious enough to help us celebrate our ethnicity, especially during the month of October, but all year round as well. So our next stop is unfortunately the town that had to cancel its festival this year. And my heart aches for the people of Jessup because La Corsa dei Ceri to me is Lackawanna County's most traditional and most representative Italian feast. It has actually been claimed that La Corsa dei Ceri is the nation's largest representation of northern or north central Italian heritage. And that's right here in our own backyard. So if you have not made it to Jessup to see La Corsa dei Ceri, I strongly suggest that you do. Let's try to make 2021 the year of the surging mass of people in Jessup to support them when they get their festival back. This is an exact carbon copy of the festival in Gubbio. And one of the earliest photos that I was able to find of it is this one from 1915. And what you're looking at is actually Church Street in Jessup back in the day. And you can see the Ceri still look very similar, except that the costumes are a little different. And you could just see a horse-drawn carriage off to the left there, but very, very close to what we see today when we go to La Corsa dei Ceri. Legend states for St. Ubaldo that at the time when he was the Bishop of Gubbio, he returned from negotiations with Frederick I Barbarossa, and the people of Gubbio were worried about him because he was their bishop. He was their spiritual leader. So they actually got Bishop Ubaldo, placed him on a platform and paraded him through the streets of Gubbio so the citizens could see that he's okay. So that is actually where the origin of La Corsa dei Ceri comes from. They just wanted to make sure that he was okay. And he was, and we have this beautiful remembrance of him as the protector in life as well as a saint for the town of Gubbio and the people who have the origins from the town of Gubbio in the United States today, as well as throughout the rest of the world. La Corsa dei Ceri is a test of agility. So how I taught you just a few minutes ago, the phrase brutta figura, it would be a brutta figura if they dropped it. It would be a disgrazia, so a disgrace. You cannot drop one of these. They are held perpendicular and they are a test of such agility that the people in Jessup actually train to be able to carry these. So this way they are able to safely get the Ceri moving. They can't drop it. You have to make sure that it's taken and done very carefully. And you'll start seeing, as we go through some of these photos, the groups there. So every group that is carrying one of these Ceri, so the Ceri is actually the saint platform that you are seeing. It's a group of 10 men, and they're called the Ceraioli, so the carriers of the Ceri. And they're led by who is called the Capo Dieci, so the head of 10. La Corsa dei Ceri was suspended in 1952 because of the Korean War. And this is just because they didn't have enough of men to be able to carry these saints through the streets. So it was revived in 1976 as a part of the United States bicentennial and Jessup centennial as a borough. The borough officials at the time wanted to come up with a way to honor the town's heritage. And they remembered from hearing stories from some of the older townspeople that there was this wonderful saint event that they did every May. And they wanted to try to get that back. So they actually sent a contingent over to Gubbio and they reestablished their ties with Italy. And those ties are so strong today that they will never be broken. Jessup, out of any town in our area, has the strongest ties with their original town in Italy. The day of La Corsa dei Ceri begins with a mass at Queen of Angels. And what you're seeing here is a great photo. Linda Anelli from Jessup is the one who gave me the modern photos of La Corsa dei Ceri. And you could really see the different groups. So you're looking at, to the left, the family of St. George. And St. George is in blue. He represents Gubbio's tradesmen and merchants. St. Ubaldo is in the middle, and he represents the stonemasons, and his color is yellow. And then off to the right is St. Anthony, and he is in black, and he represents Gubbio's peasants and laborers. What you're seeing right there is the construction that day of the Ceri. And the Capodieci, you can see them on top of these Ceri that are being built. They're about to receive what's called a brocca. And it is a ceremonial vase that they will then toss from the top. And it's done that way for good luck. So to make sure that they have good luck during the day and don't commit a disgrazia such as dropping the cero. And what you can see right there is the statue of St. Ubaldo that was donated to the borough of Jessup from the town of Gubbio. This is absolutely stunning if you get to see it in real life. The St. Ubaldo Cultural Center in Jessup has this. It's where everything is housed during the year. And I strongly suggest if anyone's interested in our local Italian American heritage and history, definitely go check it out because the photos do not do it justice. This was done because Gubbio wanted to thank Jessup for caring so much about its Italian heritage. So this actually is processed through the streets, not as a part of La Corsa dei Ceri because it's not a cero, as you saw in the earlier photos, but this is just done as a way to invoke St. Ubaldo's blessing on the town of Jessup. The two towns, like I said, have a very strong tie to each other. There's a contingent that usually comes over from Gubbio, and there's a contingent from Jessup that goes to Gubbio to watch their La Corsa dei Ceri. Another curiosity about this is that the borough of Jessup will never run their La Corsa dei Ceri before the town of Gubbio. So this year, the town of Gubbio canceled theirs. Jessup followed suit. So Gubbio always goes first and then Jessup. But we're hoping that they get to have it next year. And I think it will be a wonderful celebration, especially, again, going back to the theme of resilience that Maureen and I spoke of before. This is just a sign of resilience. They will bounce back from this and they will be stronger and better than ever. And we'll all celebrate with them. The next place I would like to show you is a smaller procession in Lackawanna County. As you saw, La Corsa dei Ceri takes place over Memorial Day weekend. This one actually takes place over Father's Day weekend, and it's in the city of Scranton, and it's in honor of La Madonna della Buddha. And this is a representation of the Blessed Virgin Mary. It is a Calabrese representation. So she is the patron saint of the town of San Mango d'Aquino in Calabria. And one thing that you will notice if you are driving through the Bull's Head section of Scranton, it's where the Actors Circle Theater is today. If you look up on the building, you will actually see San Mango d'Aquino Mutual Aid Society on the building. A mutual aid society was very important in early Italian American history because people would contribute a sum of money to this society. And God forbid, if somebody was killed in the coal mines, this money would then be used to help defray funeral expenses or costs. It was kind of like a rudimentary insurance policy. So if you are going through Bull's Head, just kind of look up on that building and you'll be able to see it. The Feast of La Madonna della Buddha has a mass. It also has a traditional blessing as well as a picnic and private veneration at McDade Park in Scranton. It's a much smaller event. It's not as heavily publicized as some of the other Italian festivals that you'll hear about tonight, but it is still a very important and very special representation of Italian American culture, specifically Calabrese in our area. The next one is actually in Carbondale, so Lackawanna County's second city after Scranton. And this is Our Lady of Mount Carmel. So the Italian immigrants that settled in Carbondale, most of them were of Sicilian origin. And I say most of them because not all of them were. If you're looking at the different towns, you might say, okay, well, the people in Jessup, they're from Gubbio. You might have someone who's Sicilian living in Jessup. It just is the way that it is. So I am generalizing only because this is where the majority of the people are from. It's not to exclude anyone. So in Carbondale, this community is actually a little bit more on the Sicilian end. And what you're seeing right there with the dollar bills, they are a traditional thing that people do. So the immigrants, back when these processions would happen, would come and pin a dollar on the saint's sash. So you see Our Lady of Mount Carmel, she's there, and they have the sashes where these dollar bills are going to be placed. $1 back in the peak years of immigration would be equal to $25 today. So you can actually get a really good sense of how important it was for these immigrants to venerate their saints. This is gone on in Carbondale for a little over 100 years at this point, and Our Lady of Mount Carmel Parish holds a picnic starting on the Thursday closest to the feast day in July. So this is a July festival. And you could see right there. One of the curiosities of this festival is that at the conclusion, the women of Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church actually escort the Virgin Mary back, and the men run ahead to prepare the church for her arrival. A lot of times people would think it'd be the opposite. The women would be preparing the church and the men would be escorting her back, but it's actually the men running to the church and the women escorting her home. And it's just a little peculiar, interesting fact about that festival. It's on a Sunday. It goes through the entire town of Carbondale, and it's a really beautiful traditional feast if you do get a chance to check that out. And again, like all Italian feasts, there's wonderful food at this one, just like at all the ones I am telling you about today. The next stop on our little tour of Lackawanna County is my hometown of Dunmore, and this one is actually very special to me because St. Rocco is the patron saint of my family's town of Guardia Lombardi, Avellino Province, Italy. And you can see St. Rocco right here in this vintage photo from the 1990s. Bunker Hill in Scranton has an interesting layout because it kind of splits between Scranton and Dunmore. So this procession splits between the two towns just because of how Bunker Hill is laid out. And Bunker Hill's topography is a lot like Guardia. You saw in the picture where the Cherry were being constructed for Jessup, very similar to Umbria, where Gubbio is located. Here for St. Rocco, it's very similar to the topography of Guardia. The immigrants would settle in these areas that kind of looked like their homes to evoke them. And believe me, having been to Guardia, there are some points when you're driving around Bunker Hill that you're really not sure if you're in the United States or Italy. It looks that similar. This festival is over 100 years old as well. And the statues go over about 1.5 miles of terrain here. St. Rocco is the patron saint, like I said, of Guardia Lombardi. And going back to the whole story of plagues, he's the protector against plagues. Guardia actually was hit by a very bad plague in 1656. In fact, the plague was so bad that it killed the town's priest. And interestingly enough, the town's priest had left money for the construction of a chapel in honor of St. Rocco to the town because he was praying so fervently to St. Rocco to end this plague. And unfortunately, Dom Nunzio died before the plague was eradicated from Guardia. But people were praying so much to St. Rocco that eventually St. Rocco's intercession did come true, and he was named the protector of the town of Guardia. This plague in 1656 killed 1,100 of Guardia's 1,475 residents. So very bad plague, very difficult time for these people. Guardia has patron saints. St. Gaetano and Pope St. Leo are actually Guardia's patron saints. St. Rocco is considered the protector of the Guardiers, and that is why he is venerated by the Guardiers community in the United States as the protector, because he protected them when they came to their new country. And again, very similar to the other Italian festivals that you've seen, people get to pin their offerings on the saints. They get to pray to them, whatever kind of veneration they are able to do, and whatever they feel in their heart is the right way to venerate the saints. When the parish of St. Rocco merged with the parish of St. Anthony to become the parish of Saints Anthony and Rocco back in 2010, they actually added St. Anthony to the procession. And it's kind of funny because St. Anthony, the church in Dunmore, actually was founded by a lot of people from the town of Calitri in Italy. And Calitri and Guardia are close, but the Calitrani wanted to have their own parish. The Guardiers wanted to have their own. So they actually got united. Interestingly, when St. Anthony was brought into this procession, it became closer to what it was in Guardia. It actually became a carbon copy. Before that, it was just the Blessed Virgin Mary, St. Joseph, and St. Rocco, and not a carbon copy of the festival. And also at this one, people are able to get blessed by a relic of St. Rocco that is housed at St. Rocco's Church. We're going to head back into the city of Scranton. And we have the big one. So St. Rocco was during the early time of August, the early weeks. This is toward the end for Labor Day weekend. It's La Festa Italiana. And as you can see from this photo, yeah, root beer and pierogies are not Italian, but they are. This, to me, La Festa Italiana represents that welcoming spirit that Italian Americans have. And you have to understand there are Italian foods that have become such a part of the fabric of our culture that they're Italian American. Pizza is an Italian dish, but it's so American now that it's considered an American thing. So it doesn't bother me to see root beer, pierogies, hot dogs, any of that at La Festa Italiana, because it just represents that beautiful patchwork that is the United States. And Italians, we love people and we love good food. So of course we want to have all the good food at our event. The reason why it is held in downtown Scranton is because Courthouse Square is the closest thing that Lackawanna County has to a piazza. The piazza in Italy is the place where people gather the most. It is the town square. It is the center of life and activity in the towns in Italy. So this is just a celebration of that spirit that we have. And this was another one that was done in the 1970s as part of the American Bicentennial and moved forward to this day. You see some really cool musical acts that come to this from throughout all of the United States. There's Italian American acts, there's traditional American musical acts. Wonderful event celebrating Italian American history and culture. And when we say Italian American in this sense, it is truly Italian and American. So it is just that celebration of Italian Americans in this country embracing their American side, which is the pierogies maybe, which may be the birch beer, the root beer, the hot dogs, as well as their Italian side, which for me at least would be pizza, cannoli, spaghetti, all that yummy stuff. And you can even see some of the pizza there. This is Buona Pizza from Scranton. You can just see that delicious pizza. A lot of vendors also come in from New York and New Jersey. New York and New Jersey are the United States' most heavily concentrated Italian areas. And these vendors actually come to our area to celebrate. They do make a killing here because so many Italians and non-Italians alike come to La Festa Italiana. And of course, you could also get your very nice Italian novelty items, such as the Kiss Me I'm Italian. I have the original Kiss Me I'm Italian pin that my mother bought me when I was about 5 or 6 years old to this day. So again, just being very proud of your heritage, always caring about that. And our final stop on our Italian tour of Lackawanna County is in the pizza capital of the world, Old Forge. And this is actually one of my favorite feasts to talk about. It is Our Lady of Constantinople, but we all know it collectively as the Felites Festival, but the actual representation of the Virgin Mary and the religious aspect is Our Lady of Constantinople. This tradition goes back to the town of Felito in Campania. And Our Lady of Constantinople is the representation of the Virgin Mary that they venerate because they believe that she brought them through tough times. And they celebrate the fact that she did this for the immigrants as well as the town of Felito itself. And what you're seeing right there is the children of Old Forge on a float that is meant to represent the boat that the immigrants came over on. And you could see the girls from the town, they are carrying a handmade rosary, and you could see the statue of Our Lady of Constantinople, again, with the money pinned to her sashes, processing through Old Forge. What they do is they actually go through the town and they go to the chapel that was built. So they leave Prince of Peace Parish and they process through the town until they get to the chapel on 3rd Street in Old Forge. Felite's veneration of Our Lady of Constantinople dates back to the 1790s. It was discontinued in the 1930s, but then it was revived in the 1980s by the Felites Association. And in this photo, you can actually see them on their way from Prince of Peace to the chapel on 3rd Street. Prince of Peace is the parish. The church is actually Our Lady of Grace. And what these girls are doing is they're carrying flowers that were blessed at the altar in the church during the mass that's held. And each flower represents one of the children's prayers for his or her family. So they could ask of the Blessed Virgin Mary for whatever they want. And those flowers are then carried through town and brought to the chapel on 3rd Street in Old Forge. And here's Our Lady of Constantinople at the chapel after the procession, where people can venerate and pray to her. And these young men are the Rinaldi boys. And the really cool thing is that sash that they get to wear. And the Felates procession is the only one in our area that does this. The children that are going through this procession actually have the option of wearing a sash emblazoned with their family name or their ancestor's name on it. And it's a way to bring that ancestor in, to have him or her as a part of the festival. And like most Italian festivals in our area, this is a 3-day festival, and the procession is on the last day. So as part of our tour, to recap, we went to Jessup and we saw La Corsa dei Ceri. We went to Scranton for La Madonna della Buddha and La Festa Italiana. We went up to Carbondale for Our Lady of Mount Carmel, Dunmore for St. Rocco, and then Old Forge for Our Lady of Constantinople. And with that, I say grazie to all of you. And if you would like more information, if you just want to talk about Italian American things, or just want to learn a little bit more, or maybe you have something that you want to tell me that maybe I don't know, these are just some different ways that you could contact me via the internet, Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Please make sure if you're looking for me on LinkedIn that you look for the Stephanie Longo in Scranton, Pennsylvania. There are several Stephanie Longos, but I am the only one from Scranton. And I would just love to hear from you and talk to you. And I have to thank Maureen and Lackawanna County for having me tonight. It's always a pleasure, and I love sharing what I do with everyone. So grazie mille.
Thank you, Stephanie. We just want to say goodbye and thank you. And, you know, I think there's a lot of things people learn that maybe they didn't know. Other festivals that even though we can't go out now, they can write down and hopefully check out when we're all hopefully back out in the real world. So thank you again. It was a wonderful presentation. And again, if you like this, please, she has a book, Italians, Americans of Northeastern PA, and you can check out the podcast that she manages. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to bring on our next guest, who's a musician. He's a folk country, although he has a really interesting background. We're going to chat with him just for a minute so you can kind of get to know him a little bit. Hi, Bryan. Let me, okay, you're unmuted. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good, we can hear you. Technology is working.
Awesome, very good.
Prayer to one of those Italian saints we just saw. So we're glad you could join us. I was just kind of talking about how you're one of the new musicians that I met through this project, which I'm really excited about. You know, at Lackawanna County Arts and Culture, we like to support all musicians, but sometimes we don't know everybody. So hold on one second. My phone is making weird noise. So, you know, when we were chatting, I love this connection too. We had our first week was Chris Ludzik, and I found out you have a connection to him, and you also have a connection to our final guest, Anthony Fortuna. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Like, how you know the people?
Oh, how I know the two. Okay, so Chris and I went way back. Me and him played shows throughout the entire early 2000s, and Chris and I also had a side project called The Latter Day, which we released an album in 2006, and we're actually going to be making some new recordings this year, making most of our quarantine time. And I know Anthony because he, I believe, was a Marywood student, and we hired him to play woodwinds in our pit when I was directing well, I still am, when I was directing a musical at Lakeland. So
yeah, I just, you know, one of the things some musicians have said that I've interviewed about what they like about Northeastern PA is just the support and the connections in this area. So I just thought that was a neat little story. Like many, you grew up, you know, with music in your family. You said, you know, your dad was a drummer and you played piano, and you kind of had you were into a different, I like you, you're very eclectic. So you started out in a different direction, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about, you know, your musical journey?
Yeah, so basically my parents had music playing throughout the house. You know, they played everything from the Beatles to Jethro Tull to anything, and I loved all of it. And when I got into college, I started playing my songs for people, and I got really heavily into punk rock. And for a long time now, I'm going to say the early 2000s, I had a heavy punk kind of screamo project called An Autumn Sunrise. And it's funny because my favorite songwriter is John Denver, and somehow I ended up getting into punk rock. But I still love the way John Denver wrote music, and even in the punk music, I would try to structure my songs and my lyrics the way he did. So it was very interesting. So
Yeah, no, I just love that we don't know where we're going to end up, and you kind of you got sort of into the folk country because somebody didn't they ask you to play some country songs?
yeah, so even though I did like John Denver, I never really got huge into country, especially, the pop country in the 90s and stuff. I was never really into it. And somebody asked me to play Private Party, and they asked if I played any country music. I said, I'll learn some, and I really enjoyed learning it. And at the time, I was starting to think this is kind of something that I might want to try out. So then I started playing drums in a cover band called Big Country, and they're kind of more down in the like Hunlock Creek area down that way.
Hmm.
So I played drums with them, and I discovered Chris Stapleton and kind of like the more old school style country artists, and then I got into the old country, and that's kind of where I am now, kind of the country rock blues kind of thing. I tried 2 years ago to do pop country, but that was really a disaster, and it was kind of bubblegum, and I just it just didn't fit me.
Yeah, I think you have to connect to the music.
Yeah.
And I think because obviously we've had to switch at our department to online, you and I sort of chatted, and I've been chatting to everybody about this. Like, how do this is such a weird time in the world. And, there's
Yeah.
obviously challenges. And I used to play in bars, but you had some positive things to say, like a lot of people, about what you're finding as your nav, because I know you do Facebook Live and other performances online.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah, I see lots of artists putting themselves out there online, even people who said that they would never want to perform online are doing it, and they're all getting positive feedback. Everybody's sharing each other's live feeds and videos and everything. And I just feel like, I love playing in clubs and bars and stuff, but the people who are there aren't always there to see you. But when somebody tunes into your live stream, they're there for the music. So every single person who was there wants to listen to you, which is really cool. I just feel like there might be some kind of reawakening of the arts or something through this, because everybody's kind of stuck at home and they're checking out new artists and all this stuff. And people are putting themselves out there in different ways.
Yeah, that was beautifully said. I think
Thank
that's
you.
a great perspective, that it's reconnecting people to the arts, differently than they would be in a social space, but in some way more focused. And just before we let you play, you also had some nice things to say about living here in Lackawanna County. We, since we're sponsored by Lackawanna County, we like to promote the county and see what people like about living here. We just saw some amazing Italian festivals, so I mean that's worth it to live here alone. But you had some
Hmm.
nice things to say about the scenery.
Yeah, I love the mountains. I grew up in Montdale, and I mean, I was out in the woods every day of my life since I was a little kid. And even now, I live in Oliphant, and I still have a wonderful view of the mountains. I
Yeah.
live very close to a park, and the park you can kind of hop up and you can go take a walk in the woods. It's great. I just feel like the scenery here is beautiful, and I honestly um, had a couple opportunities to move out of the area, and I just couldn't do it.
Mm.
And I just like staying here.
Well, we like to hear that. And you'll probably say this throughout your performance, but where can people find your music, after seeing you here?
Sure, you can find me on Facebook. So if you put Bryan Wylder official, it'll come up as Bryan Wylder Brophy because my last name is actually Brophy, and Wylder I added for this specific project. You
Yeah.
can find me on Instagram, Bryan Wylder Official, and you can also find me on Bandcamp, bryanwylder.bandcamp.com. You could also hear my old pop punk screamo stuff at not Bryan Wylder, at inautumnsunrise.bandcamp.com. And we just put up a new Facebook page for the latter day, Chris and I's thing as well. So you can find all that stuff on my social media. I link to everything on everything.
Another great thing about living in today's world. Well, thank you very much. We're
Yeah.
looking forward to hear you play, and then I'll pop back in to thank you and say goodnight before we bring Anthony on. Bye-bye.
Awesome. So what time, Maureen? What time am I going till?
8:30.
8:30? Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Roughly. If you go over, it's okay.
Okay, no problem. All right, hello everybody. So my name is Bryan Wylder, and I'm going to play the first country song I ever attempted to write. This is called Feels Like Home. It's pretty much just about how I'm coming back to my roots and just how much I love being in the country. When I feel a little worried, when I feel a little down, there's a place I like to go out on the other side of town. It might seem a little simple, the horns flashing city lights. There are no bars on the corner, nothing but the countryside. And it feels so right in the cool evening light, and I finally feel alive. And it feels like home, I ain't lost anymore. It's so good to know where I finally belong. So put on an old pair of blue jeans, hop in my four-wheel drive. I'll take you up that old dirt road, show you how to stop the time. And it feels so right in the cool evening light, and I finally feel alive. And it feels like home, I ain't lost anymore. It's so good to know where I finally, oh, this is how it feels to truly be alive. And oh, some don't understand. Yours is yours, and this is mine. Up on 247, like mild stomping grounds. We can watch the brilliant sunset as the crickets sing their songs. And it feels so right in the cool evening light, and I finally feel alive. And it feels like home, I ain't lost anymore. It's so good to know where I finally belong. Where I finally belong. Where I finally belong. All right, so that was Feels Like Home. Again, my name is Bryan Wylder. Some people in the area will know me as Bryan Brophy. So this is my Wylder project. So I'm going by the name Bryan Wylder for this project. I'm gonna do another song now called Narrow Gate. And basically this is about how everybody thinks they know you. They think they've walked a mile in your shoes, but they really don't have any clue. So it's better, instead of worrying about what they think, it's better to find something bigger than yourself and to believe in that and to believe what the Almighty thinks. So this is called Narrow Gate. I've been knocked down, I've been kicked around, I've been misunderstood, even though I try to be good. I'm not a perfect man, some days it's hard to stand. Some just don't wanna understand. Dear Lord, help me get through another day. Help me clean up every mess I made. 'Cause it's by your precious blood I've been saved. 'Cause I long to enter through that narrow gate. Sometimes all I do is cry. Sometimes I wanna die. People let me down, or try to run me out of town. I don't trust no one, I turn my back and run. I guess you could say my faith in humankind is done. Dear Lord, help me get through another day. Help me clean up every mess I made. 'Cause it's by your precious blood I've been saved. 'Cause I long to enter through that narrow gate. I've been drinking and smoking and swearing way too much. Lately these times have been so tough. Got me leave these foolish bicycles in the dust. 'Cause you're the only one I trust. Let me get through another day. Help me clean up every mess I made. 'Cause it's by your blood they belong to enter through.
I think Bryan must be having some internet problems, so hopefully he will come back. It was really nice to listen to him, and it's very interesting hearing people's kind of backgrounds and how they got to be artists. Oh, Bryan is back, so you don't have to listen to me.
I am back. That was really strange.
Okay, I'm gonna jump out now, and I'll put you back on. So.
All right, sounds good. Okay, I'm not sure how much of that song you got to hear, so I'll finish the end of it. Don't ever live for yesterday. You must look toward tomorrow. All right, so I'm gonna sing a song now called Electric City Blues. And part of this is not that I have the blues of being part of the Electric City area. It's just a bluesy tune, and I sing the song just about being here in Scranton, Lackawanna County. And I'm a big train fanatic, so I love going to Steamtown and going to the trolley car museum and all that. So this song kind of inspired me to write about where I grew up. So this song is called The Electric City Blues. the whistle blowing loud. Steam billows in a great white cloud. Heavy steel is rolling down the track. Sights and sounds should take us back. It's like we're in another time. Coal country thriving in its prime. Electric City trolley cars. This rolling legacy is ours. The world was always on the move. The times they come and go too soon. You either win or you will lose. You either thrive or sing the blues. I was born a Pennsylvania man, Lackawanna County, promised land. From the country outside of town, I've had my ups and had my downs. My granddaddy was a coal man, the other worked with his hands. My folks knew good and hard times. We all chased the nickel and the dime. The world is always on the move. The times they come and go too soon. You either win or you will lose. You either thrive or sing the blues. I've played in all the smoky bars, but I have never been a star. I only sing what is real. At least I sing the things I feel. Another place is shutting down. Corporate windows round town. Some will stay and some will go. But we all reap the things we sow. The world is always on the move. The times they come and go too soon. You either win or you will lose. You either thrive or sing the blues. You either thrive or sing the blues. All right, that song was called Electric City Blues. So I'm going to play a song now from the Latter Day album. So if you guys who are just tuning in, I have a side project with my best friend Chris Ludzik, and we're called The Latter Day. And here is the first song off of our 2006 album. This is one of the songs that I wrote for the album, and this is called October. Do you remember me? Can you feel my pain? Since I smothered the embers to a perfect flame, but I was scared Please try to understand it now. It's the 3rd of October. Do you really think that I'd forget? Though you should, I should, but I can't. Even if I try, it'll soon be November, December. The weather has grown. All right, sorry about that. I guess my internet keeps going out, so I'm gonna do one more. So this song is called "The Devil Wears a Smile," and basically this song is just about how the devil likes to trick people into thinking that they're a good person or doing something good, and sometimes it's actually the exact opposite. The Great Deceiver. So this song is called "The Devil Wears a Smile." See that wicked devil even looked him in the eye, believing in all his empty words, eating up his lies. But he don't look much different than you or me on the outside. But I've seen that devil face to face, and he always wears a smile. Out there in the desert, struggle towards the dawn. There's a darkness waging war, and the battle rages on. Lurking in the shadows, his sword's already been drawn. So you better get your armor and fight before your soul is gone. And he'll try to get into your head to make you think that he's so wise. And I've looked that devil in the eye, and he always wears a smile. He is always talking through corrupt and crooked teeth, conning us to trust him through every word and deed. A facade that's cloaked in kindness, that's what he wants us all to see. And he'll even call you a friend, but he don't really care about you or me. And he'll try to get into your head to make you think that he's so wise. And I've looked that devil in the eye, and he always wears a smile. Does seduce you into thinking that you need him to survive. Then when he ain't looking, he'll be rubbing us up blind. And he is always scheming. He'll even make it seem sublime. And he'll steal you from the Savior, then leave you there to die. And he'll try to get into your head to make you think that he's so wise. And I look that devil in the eye, and she always wears a smile. And he'll try to tell you what to do, because he thinks that he's so wise. even though he always wears a smile. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bryan. We enjoyed your set, and good luck to you. Again, you can find him all over social media, and he has been doing live performances. So again, thanks for joining us tonight.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Yeah, stay safe and healthy. Thank you.
You too, God bless.
Okay, so again, thank you for joining us on Lackawanna Arts and Culture Live. We're here every Wednesday, 7 to 9 ish. Again, thank you to Electric City Television for helping us air this to a wide audience. Thanks to Jess Mione for her great publicity of the event. And I'm going to bring in our last musician for tonight, Anthony Fortuna, another musician that I've gotten to meet for the first time. And I'm excited because this is our first classical music performer. Hi, Anthony.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great so far, you know. We have fun here. And it was funny, we were just talking to Brian Brophy, who said he knows you.
Yeah,
that you played in his...
oh gosh, years and years ago I played for him. Years.
Yeah, that connection though, you know, it's kind of neat that we're seeing all these connections between different musicians in our area, especially during a time like this when we need to support each other. I like about how close we all are here. So we really want to get to the heart of your show because I think you have a really exciting show. I'm excited. Classical music is so beautiful and so wonderful and so passionate, and it's nice to expose people to that who might not have had a chance or maybe think it's not for them. I think when people hear it, they are struck by it. So I'm looking forward to it. But I think it's really important. I love this story you told me, if you could just talk about briefly of how important your arts education was to you. I mean, now you're pursuing your PhD in music and musical pedagogy and literature with woodwind instruments. So, but I think that all started back when you were in school.
Yeah, so I was talking to, I guess, Maureen about my story a little bit about how I was dead set in middle school, I guess, you know, when I was like 14 on being an actor, and I took an acting class, and, you know, I just really, it was not for me. It was like, all my life I wanted to be the star of the show, just to realize that I really didn't enjoy being on stage, but I still really enjoyed being a part of productions, just under the stage playing in the pit. So I ended up taking band my sophomore year of high school just because I was like, well, I don't know what other class to take, and I fell in love with it. It became like this obsession, and I remember the first time I went to an honor band festival and I heard everyone playing together. It was kind of like I had this moment of, you know, this was it for me. This was what I wanted to do with the rest of my life and what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I knew that no matter what, I wanted to be a musician and then teach others the same love of music that I developed over time because of the opportunities, experiences, and teachers that I had.
Yeah, I think that's just a good reminder of why supporting arts in education is so important, even when times are tough. You know, the arts brings so much to people. And just another quick question before the important part is we're going to hear you play and talk about these instruments. But I kind of enjoyed what you were saying. You know, you play many instruments, like 4 or 5, but you were talking about the oboe and how you have a certain passion for that instrument.
Yeah, so when I was in high school, I was a clarinetist. I started out on clarinet, and I learned the flute, and I really enjoyed the flute, and I kind of kept up my studies on both of them to be, you know, about an equal level. It was interesting. At honor band every year, I would always play similarly, but I remember the first time I heard an oboe when I was a junior in high school, and it was just kind of the sound that I was like, that's the sound I want to make. I mean, that's it for me, you know? And while I still really enjoyed playing flute and clarinet, the oboe really spoke to me in a way that other instruments didn't. So it was exciting to, I guess, find that musical voice. And then also in my journey to have the opportunity to pick up the saxophone eventually and the bassoon later on in my graduate studies, it was just, you know, amazing. And it just kind of worked out, I guess, you know? Some people will talk about having one main instrument. For me, it feels like all the woodwinds are my main instrument, you know, but I always feel like the oboe has been more my voice than any other instrument that I've played.
Oh, that's so cool. And we'll want to start in 1 minute, but I did want to talk about, I hope this will be resurrected. You were talking about you were trying to start an orchestra in Luzerne County, right? Was it the Diamond? So I know the pandemic, but you know, tell us a little bit about that and if you are going to bring that back maybe when times are better.
Sure. So I was recently, well, I guess not recently, it's been over a year now, asked to join the faculty at the Suzuki School for Strings in Plains, PA, and it was just such a wonderful opportunity. I ended up starting a music camp series for woodwind camps, and we did some really great music, and one of my goals was to then start an orchestra, because we didn't really have a youth orchestra in the area, and we also didn't have any opportunities for adults to pick up an instrument that they used to play back in high school. And I thought, okay, well, let's start 2 separate orchestras. Then it ended up working out that we didn't get enough people to do youth orchestra, but we had plenty of people to do our adult orchestra, which was really cool. So we ended up kind of taking the couple of youth members and combining them with the adults, and we formed the Electric Diamond Orchestra. And we were supposed to have our first concert. It was a shame. We ended up getting canceled by the venue like 2 days before our first concert, and it was really heartbreaking because we had some really great music lined up, and there was plenty of opportunity for anybody who wanted to come and join. You know, we opened it up to basically anybody who wanted to come and do it, and it was just a wonderful project. And I'm hoping that we could recover our numbers when this all is over, you know. So, because it seems like, you know, music is, well, classical music isn't doing all that well in this moment, especially with what happened with Wilkes University and their band programs being in danger of being completely destroyed. And, you know, I mean, if you haven't seen that, or if you're interested in supporting the arts, definitely, like, you know, send me a message or you know, and like, you know, just look around, I guess, you know, because there's so much that can be done, and I really would love to see there to be a bigger growing interest for classical music and the arts in this area, and I guess it's just been a personal mission of mine since I've been back.
Yeah, I love that. You really dedicate a lot. And I think that's a good message that right now we're sort of in a holding pattern, but there's lots of ways to get involved. Hopefully when we come out, and in the meantime, you can reach out to people and get involved maybe that way, just learning about things or performing online. So please keep that in mind. And we hope to see that orchestra up and running soon. But now I'm going to turn it over to you because you're our last guest, and I'm so excited. I think this is going to be a great program. He's going to showcase instruments and play some music for us. So thank you, Anthony. I'll pop back in just to thank you and say goodnight, but looking forward to your music.
Sure, thank you. All right, so I guess I want to say one more thing, part of the interview before I get started is, you know, I've been doing webcam lessons with all of my students, and it has been incredibly successful. So if you are interested in studying woodwind instruments, feel free to send me a message, or studying string instruments with any of my colleagues at the Suzuki School for Strings. We would love to have you. So I guess without further ado, here's my recital for woodwinds. I will be starting on the flute, and I'll be doing a piece by Debussy called Syrinx. And this piece of music is played a lot in nature commercials. It's a French Impressionist piece. So if you're familiar with the art of that era, this music is kind of I guess the way in which Debussy expressed that artistic movement through sound. So it's about the Greek myth, Pan and Syrinx, and I have 2 pieces that I'll be playing for you that have to do with the same myth. This is Syrinx's side, and I'll also be doing a piece on oboe, well, a movement of a piece on oboe called Pan, and Pan and Syrinx are these 2 Greek myths. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Syrinx at first, give you 2 sides of the story. So Syrinx was being pursued by Pan, but she didn't reciprocate her love of him. And so she was chased by him and then sought the help of river nymphs, who then turned her into a bunch of reed pipes. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. So this is a piece of music about Syrinx running away from Pan. So I really hope you enjoyed my rendition of Syrinx by Debussy, and now I will be performing Pan from the Sixth Metamorphosis after Ovid by Benjamin Britten for solo oboe. Please hold a second, I have to get the reed set up. So part of the fun of playing the oboe is it's a double reed woodwind instrument. What that means is it has two reeds that are sandwiched on top of each other. It's kind of hard to see from this angle, but this is one side of the reed and this is the other side. So they are folded together, and I actually make these myself and hope they work because oboe is hard. But anyways, I guess I'll take a second and just play a couple of notes, make sure my reed is working, and then we'll continue the show. Seems like we're good. So this movement is the first movement of the Sixth Metamorphosis after Ovid by Benjamin Britten, called Pan, and this is after Syrinx has been turned into the pipes that became what we now know as the instrument, the pan flute. So what Pan did was he noticed that the sound that the wind made when it blew across these reeds was beautiful, and this is supposed to be the music that you first heard him play on the flute, the pan flute that then became, well, that was the reeds that were Syrinx. Sorry. All right. So here is the first movement, Pan. So I hope you enjoyed my rendition of Pan from the Sixth Metamorphosis after Ovid by Benjamin Britten. Now I'll be doing the fourth movement called Bacchus. Now the interesting thing about this movement is that Bacchus is actually a Roman god. It's based on the Greek god counterpart Dionysus. So I'm not really sure why Benjamin Britten made the title of this movement, where the rest of the piece is all Greek gods. This one's a Roman god. Essentially the god of parties, the god of wine, and the god of theater, I believe. And so this movement isn't a direct metamorphosis in the sense that something transforms like Syrinx did into the pan flute that the Pan ended up playing, but rather it's supposed to depict a party with lots of things going on. Benjamin Britten writes on the top of the music, Bacchus, at whose feast is heard the noise of gaggling women's tattling tongues and the shouting of boys. So you'll be able to hear these different events occurring, and there's even a part where I think it's my favorite part. The Bacchus sort of belches and burps, and you have to create that sound on the oboe, and it's really, I think, a fun interpretation of this Greek myth. So now I'll be performing Bacchus from the Sixth Metamorphosis after Ovid by Benjamin Britten. So I guess that ends the oboe portion of my program. Now I'm going to be playing some clarinet music for you. I hope you all really enjoyed my rendition of Bacchus from the Sixth Metamorphosis after Ovid by Benjamin Britten. So I need a second to switch instruments, so bear with me. So the next piece I'll be doing is the Gordon Jacob 5 Pieces for Solo Clarinet. And this piece is a significant work within the repertoire because it utilizes many of the popular compositional techniques of the time. So this piece was written in the 70s, and it was originally written for the clarinetist Georgina Dobré. So I'll be doing 3 movements, 7 movements, 1, 3, and 5. The first movement is the preamble, which features a 12-tone compositional technique, which is interesting because it utilizes all the pitches on the keyboard, and it has a rather strange kind of sound. So it sounds a little uncertain at times, but I hope that you'll enjoy it. It's a little different than some of the other pieces you may have heard in classical music or even music in general, but I'm really excited to share this piece with you. So this is the first movement, the preamble by Gordon Jacob from the 5 Pieces for Clarinet. And I gotta make sure this is all working. That's never right on the first try. I think that's better. I hope you enjoyed the first movement, the preamble from the 5 Pieces for Clarinet by Gordon Jacob. Now I'm going to be doing movement 3, an homage to JSB, which clearly refers to Johann Sebastian Bach. Now you may know Johann Sebastian Bach is the father of Western music, and he has influenced virtually every piece of music that we hear today. And so it sounds a lot like one of the classic Bach suites. Think like the Bach cello suites. And this was Jacob's homage or way of paying tribute to Johann Sebastian Bach with this movement from this piece. So I hope you enjoy it. You can hear different parts going on at the same time. Sometimes it even sounds like there's more than one person playing, which is, I think, one of the most interesting things about playing music that's Baroque and much like Bach. So keep your ear out, and maybe you can hear a couple of different parts going on at the same time. That one's relatively short, so I hope you enjoyed the homage to JSB, movement 3 of the Jacob 5 pieces for clarinet. Now I'm going to conclude the piece with the 5th movement, a scherzo in trio, and this piece is based on thirds. So you'll hear a lot of thirds that aren't necessarily reflectant of playing in a major or minor key, rather it's just a series of thirds that stack up a harmony that's interesting, but not necessarily completely diatonic or 100% tonal until you get to the end of the piece, which ends on a D major arpeggio. I mean, of course, that's a bunch of technical jargon, but if you're into that kind of stuff like I am, I guess it's just fun to talk about. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the scherzo and trio, the 5th movement of the Gordon Jacob 5 pieces for solo clarinet. Well, that was a scherzo and trio from the Gordon Jacob 5 pieces for solo clarinet, and whew, it's a workout. I definitely spent a lot of time practicing that. So some of the woodwind music that is written for unaccompanied solo woodwinds, there really isn't much stuff. And so it was, I guess I should say, like, there probably is a lot of stuff, but not a lot of very well-known stuff. Speaking of pieces that aren't as well-known, the piece that I'm going to be doing on bassoon was by Klaus George Roy, and he wrote this piece for his son, who was a high school bassoonist at the time. And this piece is one of my, I guess, has really grown on and to be one of my favorite works, because it's not crazy hard like the Gordon Jacob is, but rather attainable for a younger student to learn how to play. And while there's still challenges and techniques in it that are difficult and musically interesting, it's still not out of the realm of possibility for a younger player to be able to do. So give me a second, I have to get the bassoon all ready and set up, and I have to get my harness on and everything. So, one moment. Make sure my reeds are okay. So, the bassoon, like the oboe, is also a double reed instrument, and it's really interesting looking. So I hope you enjoy it. This is what a bassoon is, what it looks like. A lot of people don't know what a bassoon is, so I guess this is your opportunity to learn. So the bassoon is a woodwind instrument that plays in the lower range and is also a double reed like the oboe. And it has a very interesting, unique, and different sound. And I really hope you enjoy me performing the Suite for Solo Bassoon by Klaus George Roy on it. Okay, gotta make sure everything's all set up. So the reeds for this instrument I actually make myself as well. So it's kind of like an arts and crafts project all within playing an instrument, which is, I guess, extra fun. Well, for me it is. For some people, I guess it's not, but I really enjoy making reeds. So anyways, this is the first movement of the Suite for Solo Bassoon by Roy, called Quick March. That was the first movement of the Roy Suite for Solo Bassoon. And now I'll be playing the second movement, which is a short waltz in 3/4 time. So it's interesting to play without another instrument because you have to establish a dance tempo yourself. And I think it's a really valuable skill to have and be able to learn. So anyways, without further ado, here is my second movement of the Roy Suite for Solo Bassoon, waltz. second movement, the waltz from the suite for solo bassoon by Roy. Now, this is the final movement, a gigrando. So it has sort of a light sort of ending to the whole piece. There's 2 editions of this. I'm going to be doing the regular one. He has another one that's a little bit longer, but I figured for my purposes it would be best to do this movement. So this is the gigrando from the suite for solo bassoon by Klaus George Roy. And that concludes my woodwinds recital, so I really hope you all enjoyed that. Oh, you're on mute. I can't hear you. For some reason, I still can't hear you. Yeah, I don't know. Can you hear me?
I don't know.
Oh, now you're back. Now you're back. I can hear you now. Okay, now I can.
Again, tonight has been off, but your beautiful music made it all right. I just wanted to say that I appreciated you showing us that classical music is passionate, full of life, about silly and beautiful things when you're talking about Bacchus and the wine and the sort of partying. So I think that was a real gift. And also the physicality of it when you were talking about what a workout it is to play certain pieces. So the part of this program is to expose people to new things that maybe they didn't think were for them, but I think that was an amazing performance. And thank you for also saying if people want to get involved that they can, and to support classical music online, and also when we can go out into the real world. And yeah, we'll look for you playing more. Is there anywhere people can find you or listen to you? Do you do any live programming or?
I don't do much. I have a YouTube channel that I've been working on some multi-track recordings, and it's been really exciting because I've been playing all the parts of some pieces of music, so it's kind of like me playing on top of another part of myself playing on top of another part, and it's been my goal to do the entire Gounod Petit Symphony for winds, and it's just been so much fun to be able to do that. I have the first 2 movements up on my YouTube channel. I'm also on Facebook a lot if you want to get in touch with me on Facebook. I guess email, I mean, really anything. I've been trying my best to get out there and perform more and put my performances up, and you know, that's been, I think, one of the most fun parts about doing this project here with you.
Well, we hope we can work together again. It was so nice to meet you again. Thank you loved all the instruments, the bassoon. It was such a nice potpourri of woodwind instruments. So I learned a lot. I hope our audience did too. And thank you again, Anthony, for being part of this.
Thank you for having me.
Well, that concludes to this week's Lackawanna County Arts and Culture Live. I think we had a nice eclectic mix. We hope you enjoyed it. And again, you can join us every week through June. And again, thank you to Electric City Television and Jessica Mione and all of our viewers who are taking time to support these musicians. And hopefully we'll see you at our next show. Stay safe and healthy.